You are not allowed to impose, through the government, your religious beliefs on others. That is not what religious freedom is about. That's not what our country rests on.
Yeah.
And as a democracy, we respect other democracies' abilities to self-police and self-regulate. And so this process is underway. Our voices have been heard. Your voice is going to be heard. Obviously, there's international attention focused on this national citizenship registration.
Oh, you guys are going to love this, because today we've got a double feature. Representative Ilhan Omar tried to seize control of the narrative in two separate hearings. One focused on religion in America, the other on U.S. foreign policy with India. In both moments, she came in with the same playbook: loaded questions, dramatic framing, and an obvious attempt to push a very specific ideological agenda. But here's the problem for her. It didn't work that I end both hearings. The witnesses didn't take the bait. They stayed calm, composed, and focused on facts. No emotional spirals. No political theater. Just clear, measured responses that quietly dismantled the premise of her questions that I end the first hearing. Omar tried to frame religion in America as a looming threat, using vague accusations and moral pressure to steer the conversation. Instead of backing into her narrative, the witness responded with constitutional reality, religious freedom, equal treatment under the law, and facts that simply didn't align with the alarmist picture she was trying to paint. Then came the foreign policy hearing on India. Once again, Omar attempted to corner the witness with sweeping claims and carefully worded accusations. And once again, it backfired. The witness calmly explained the complexities of the U.S. India relationship, emphasizing diplomacy, strategic cooperation, and facts on the ground, none of which supported the simplistic narrative Omar was pushing. What makes both moments so satisfying is how effortless the pushback was. No shouting, no confrontation. Just steady, factual answers that exposed how weak the framing really was. This wasn't a debate. It wasn't a clash. It was a schooling. Ilhan Omar came in looking for viral moments. What she got instead was two clear reminders that ideology doesn't survive long when it runs headfirst into facts. Let's break it all down.
Our Constitution, we are prohibited from establishing religion, yes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what the establishment
So if you have members of Congress that are legislating laws in accordance with their faith in regards to abortion or LGBTQ or women or any of those things, that should be prohibited within our Constitution.
You are not allowed to impose, through the government, your religious beliefs on others. That is not what religious freedom is about. That's not what our country rests on.
Yeah. For many of us, religious freedom is extremely important. It is life and death in this country. Yes. Many of us fled our countries to come to the United States because that is the one thing that distinguishes us from many countries. But it's also important that we have a secular government and protect people's civil rights and access to those civil rights. And so I appreciate your testimony.
Watch closely how Representative Omar frames this question, because it's not as innocent as it sounds. She isn't simply asking about the Constitution. She's trying to quietly delegitimize lawmakers who have personal faith, essentially implying that if your beliefs influence your vote, you shouldn't be allowed to legislate at all. That's a dangerous and extreme position. What Omar wanted was a soundbite, suggesting religious people shouldn't be making laws, deliberately blurring the line between voting your conscience and establishing a state religion. But the witness, Ms. Laser, didn't fall for it. She made the distinction crystal clear. You cannot use the power of government to impose your religious beliefs on others, and that's already the law. What matters here is this. In America, people of faith are not banned from the public square. If your moral or religious beliefs inform how you view issues like life, family, or values, you have every right to vote accordingly. That's not the establishment of religion. That's democratic participation. Omar seems to believe that a secular government means religious people must be excluded entirely, and the witness correctly reminded her that this is not how the Constitution works.
As you know, last month I let a letter to Ambassador Juster and Jones with you CC'd on it on the situation of Kashmir. Our partnership with India is strategic, but it's also based on our shared values of democracy, religious pluralism, and the respect of human rights. Under Modi and the BJP government, all of these mutual values have been threatened. And I think we have to understand the situation in Kashmir as part of an overall Hindu nationalism project of the BJP. So my first question to you is about the right of self-determination. Is the United States committed to emphasizing the centrality of Kashmir voices in determining the future of the Jammu and Kashmiri people?
I would disagree with the characterization that we don't have a values-based relationship with the government of Prime Minister Modi. And I would just underscore that Prime Minister Modi came in a consecutive term. He achieved a majority vote in a very diverse
we can agree to disagree on that. I just would like to understand if we are going to centralize the voices of the Kashmiri and...
But just to provide context, I mean, the actions he took were approved in Parliament, including by members of the opposition. The Supreme Court is reviewing that decision. The High Court is reviewing habeas corpus petitions. The institutions of India's democracy are working. We absolutely believe that Kashmiri's voice needs to be heard, that in any restoration, when there is restoration of a of an assembly, when there are state assembly elections, that's the way for Kashmiris to be able to register their views, also in peaceful assembly. And so I think the concern over the restrictions on movement and what we've seen over the last 78 days is that ability to protest peacefully has been difficult for Kashmiris to exercise.
Yeah. I mean, and the part of the reason I asked and the part of the reason I emphasized the context of the larger BGP project is because I think in both cases, the impunity we have seen for crimes against Muslims under the BJP was warming for such worse things to come. In Assam, almost 2 million people are being asked to affirmably approve their citizenship. As my colleague and the chairman said, there have been official statements to the effect that no Buddhist, Christian, Sikh, or Jain refugees need to worry about their status. And so this is a clear anti-Muslim program. And I'm sure you've seen the same reports that the Indian government is starting to build camps in Assam, presumably to hold those who are unable to prove their citizenship. This is how the Rohingya genocide started. At what point do we no longer share values with India? Are we waiting for the Muslims in Assam to be put in those camps?
The certification of citizenship in Assam dates to a 2013 Supreme Court ruling that ordered the government to do so, to address questions of illegal immigration. The process, which continues to unfold and continues to be challenged in the court, it now has 1.9 million people who have not been certified. And that includes both Muslims and Hindus. There are 300 appeal panels that are being set up for those individuals to appeal this determination. And as my colleague stated, we're concerned that many of these individuals who may not have the wealth or the education to successfully be able to document their citizenship are vulnerable. We will continue to watch this very closely, but I would stress that the appeal process is still open. The judicial process is still working in India. And as a democracy, we respect other democracies' abilities to self-police and self-regulate. And so this process is underway. Our voices have been heard. Your voice is going to be heard. Obviously, there's international attention focused on this national citizenship registration.
Okay, let's slow it down and break this out clearly, because what we just watched was a perfect contrast between ideology and diplomacy. First, look at how the narrative was framed versus the actual reality. Representative Omar didn't just ask a tough foreign policy question. She framed India, the world's largest democracy, as if it were on the verge of committing genocide. That's not a neutral inquiry. That's an accusation. By doing that, She attempted to cast a key U.S. ally as a moral villain rather than a sovereign nation dealing with internal legal issues. Second, the NRC comparison is where the argument really collapsed. Omar tried to equate India's National Register of Citizens in Assam with the Rohingya crisis. That's a serious and inflammatory comparison. But Alice Wells was prepared. She added the critical context Omar left out. The NRC process was ordered by India's Supreme Court. It wasn't a political stunt or a religious purge. It was a judicially mandated process addressing illegal immigration, something every sovereign nation has the right to manage. And then came the key fact that completely undermined the religious targeting narrative. Of the 1.9 million people excluded from the NRC, both Hindus and Muslims were included. That single detail blows apart the claim that this was about persecuting one religious group. Third, the real mic drop moment was Wells' emphasis on sovereignty and self-policing. Her closing point was simple but powerful. India has courts, a constitution, opposition parties, and democratic institutions. It is capable of handling its own internal affairs. The U.S. can engage diplomatically without lecturing or undermining a strategic partner. That's what made this exchange refreshing. Instead of moral grandstanding, Wells treated India like an equal, another democracy, not a subordinate. Across two hearings, two different witnesses delivered the same message. Facts matter, context matters, and ideological framing doesn't hold up when confronted with reality. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe faith has a legitimate place in politics? And was Alice Wells right to defend India's sovereignty the way she did? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.